Well, our Ottawa Bureau Chief Rob Russo has been working the phones today. And Rob, what have you heard from Canadian officials?
Well, let me take you back, first of all, to 5 p.m. on Friday in Charlevoix, okay? There's a bilateral meeting at the end of the first day of the G7 summit between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau. And it's going so well. People are very excited. The Prime Minister's key advisors are there. Larry Kudlow is there. They're talking trade. Steve Mnuchin has been working the phones. He's not there working the phones with Finance Minister Bill Morneau. How well is it going? Trump has been asking for a sunset clause. At one point, he waved away the notion of a sunset clause, surprising his own chief negotiator, according to people who were there. And people think it's great. Next thing they hear at the end of this summit, they're having a little celebration at the end of it all when the tweet is read out to them. And their reaction, Ian, is this has got to be a parody tweet. They didn't believe that it was actually real. They had to check. They checked and found out it was real, and then realized at that moment that they were in a dangerous parallel political universe and had to jump into action.
So we're either going to have NAFTA in a better negotiated form, or we're going to have two deals.
Does it have to have a sunset clause in it?
It'll have a sunset. You have the two sunsets. I mean, you have a ISDS provision and a sunset provision. They've been very heavily negotiated. You have two sunsets, two concepts of sunset. We're pretty close on the sunset division. Okay? Well, we have one that's 5 years. You know it very well. You've studied this very well. Congratulations. That's right. You have one group that likes to have 5 years and then a renegotiation at the end of 5 years. Then you have another group that wants longer because of the investments. So, but we're pretty close.
I highlighted directly to the President that Canadians did not take it lightly. That the United States has moved forward with significant tariffs on our steel and aluminum industry, particularly did not take lightly the fact that it's based on a national security reason, that for Canadians who either themselves or whose parents or community members have stood shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers in far-off lands and conflicts from the First World War onwards, that it's kind of insulting. And I highlighted that it was not helping in our renegotiation of NAFTA, and that it would be with regret, but it would be with absolute certainty and firmness that we move forward with retaliatory measures on July 1st, applying equivalent tariffs to the ones that the Americans have unjustly applied to us. I have made it very clear to the President that it is not something we relish doing, but it is something that we absolutely will do, because Canadians were polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
Prime Minister, on NAFTA, the President spoke this morning at his press conference. He said he thinks you're close to a deal, but that a sunset clause is inevitable. There are two possibilities, he said, for a sunset clause, but there will be one. Do you agree that there will be a sunset clause? Will you consent to that? And do you think you're close?
There will not be a sunset clause. Canada has been unequivocal that we will not, cannot sign a trade deal that expires automatically every 5 years. That is not a trade deal. So that's not on the table. I think there are various discussions about alternatives that would not be that and that would not be entirely destabilizing for a trade deal. And I think we're open to creativity, but there will be no sunset clause.
If the President is saying there absolutely will be a sunset clause and you're saying there absolutely won't be a sunset clause, does NAFTA die on that hill?
No, I think it's an example of where we will continue to work together in a meaningful, responsible, serious way to bridge the gaps that we have in our positions, because as we know, a renegotiated NAFTA is good for Canada, good for the United States, and good for Mexico. And as the President, the Vice President, many people have said, it's possible to get to a win-win-win, and that's exactly what we're going to continue to work to do. We know that we can create a trade deal, a renewed NAFTA, that will be beneficial to citizens in our countries, and that's what we're going to remain focused on.
So we could read it. I left, everybody was happy, everybody shook. You should ask Prime Minister Abiy, everybody was happy, and then he gave out a little bit of an obnoxious thing. I actually like Justin. You know, I think he's good. I like him. But he shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. That's going to cost him a lot of money.
It's a long time ago.
Mr. President, it's been a busy week for you on the international stage. You're leaving this summit here in Singapore having determined that Kim Jong-un is a talented man. You left the G7 summit a few days ago in Canada having determined that Prime Minister Trudeau is weak and dishonest. What do you say to America's allies who worry that you might be jeopardizing our long-term alliances and who worry that you might be treating our historic friends as enemies and our historic enemies as friends?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very fair question. I had a very good meeting with the G7, and I left the meeting, and I'll be honest, we are being taken advantage of by virtually every one of those countries, very, very seriously. Now, the United States, because of bad management at the top, because of presidents that didn't care about trade or didn't understand it or whatever reason, for many years, with China being obviously the most successful at it, but the European Union is second, 151 billion we lost. They were represented at the meeting. And we're being taken advantage of on trade. Canada does have very big advantages over us in terms of trade deficits. We have a big trade deficit with Canada. I was reading where, it's actually a surplus. Not a surplus. It's either 17, but it could actually be 100. You know, they put out a document. I don't know if you saw it. They didn't want me to see it, but we found it. Perhaps they were trying to show the power they have. It's close to $100 billion a year loss with Canada. They don't take our farm products, many of them. They charge what was 270%, but somebody told me the other day that a few months ago they raised it to 295% for dairy products. And it's very unfair to our farmers, and it's very unfair to the people of our country, the workers, the farmers, the companies. And we are not able to trade. They have tremendous barriers up. They have tremendous tariffs. So when I put in a countervailing tariff just to get us up a little bit so the balance isn't so much, it's like this. They said, oh, that's so terrible. I said, what's terrible? We have to catch you a little bit. We have to have a little balance. Even if it's not complete, we have to have a little balance. I say this with many countries. Anyway, we finished the meeting, really everybody was happy. And I agreed to sign something. I asked for changes. I demanded changes, and those changes were made. In fact, the picture with Angela Merkel, who I get along with very well, where I'm sitting there like this, that picture was, we're waiting for the document because I wanted to see the final document as changed by the changes that I requested. That was a very friendly, I know it didn't look friendly, and I know it was reported like sort of nasty both ways. I was angry at her. Actually, we were just talking, the whole group, about something unrelated to everything, very friendly, waiting for the document to come back so I could read it before I leave. Anyway, I left it was very friendly. When I got onto the plane, I think that Justin probably didn't know that Air Force One has about 20 televisions. And I see the television and he's giving a news conference about how he will not be pushed around by the United States. And I say, push him around. We just shook hands. It was very friendly. Look, countries cannot continue to take advantage of us on trade. The numbers are out over the last couple of years, and over the last many years, but over the last couple of years, this country has lost $800 billion on trade with other countries, the biggest one being China. $800 billion. $151 billion with the European Union. They don't take our agricultural products, barely. They don't take a lot of what we have, and yet they send Mercedes into us. They send BMWs into us by the millions. It's very unfair. And it's very unfair to our workers, and I'm going to straighten it out, and it won't even be tough. Okay? Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just following on the first question, one, is your relationship with Mr. Kim stronger right now than it is with Mr. Trudeau? Do you plan on involving Congress in any kind of nuclear deal or nuclear nation deal?
I would like to involve Congress, yes. And no, I have a good relationship with Justin Trudeau. I really did. Other than he had a news conference that he had because he assumed I was in an airplane and I wasn't watching. He learned it's going to cost a lot of money for the people of Canada. He learned. You can't do that. You can't do that. We left. We had a very good relationship. I've had a good relationship with Justin. I have a good relationship with all. I have a very good relationship with Angela Merkel. But on NATO, We're paying 4.2%. She's paying 1% of a much smaller GDP than we are. We're paying 4.2% on a much larger. We're paying for, I mean, anyone can say from 60 to 90% of NATO. And we're protecting countries of Europe. And then on top of it, they kill us on trade. So we just can't have it that way. It's unfair to our taxpayers and to our people. But no, I have a good relationship with Justin, and I have, I think, a very good relationship with Chairman Kim right now. I really do. I think, I hope it's good, because if it is, we're going to solve a very big problem. I think we've gone a long way to solving it today. Should we keep going for a little while? I don't know. It's up to the legendary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Should we keep going, Sarah? Okay, we'll go. Well, I don't care. Hey, you know, it just means we get home a little later in the evening.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, when it comes to the state of the current negotiations to preserve NAFTA, there is obviously a great deal of confusion. Yesterday, the Prime Minister had a chance to come clean and be clear about one aspect, though. On Sunday, the CBC reported that the U.S. administration had, quote, waved away and finally dropped their demand for a 5-year sunset clause, something the Prime Minister had said was a major sticking point. Can the Prime Minister clearly state whether or not that report was in fact accurate?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can state without equivocation that the United States has not yet waived its demand for a NAFTA sunset clause.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Can the Prime Minister confirm or deny that that waiving of the sunset clause was at least offered during his talks with the U.S. President?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. With the American President, as is regularly, we engaged on a broad range of subjects, including in which I reiterated that the sunset clause on NAFTA would be absolutely unacceptable, that Canada could never sign a NAFTA with a sunset clause in it, and he did not immediately back down.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Let's just immediately back down.
I have to admit, I'm going to return to the previous question because I want everyone to be very, very clear on this. And I don't know exactly where the Conservatives are going with it, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. The sunset clause has been something that I have said without equivocation from the beginning would be unacceptable in a NAFTA. I have said that many times to the President. The President has not, so far as we know, with what have we seen his tweets, responded to or withdrawn his offer of his demand for a sunset clause in NAFTA. Let's be very clear about that.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks for clearing that up. Mr. Speaker.
Note from Gerald.
Note from Gerald Butts. Notes from Gerald.
A week ago, you were up in Canada, and you met with the G7 people. That didn't end so well.
No, it ended well for the United States. It ended well.
Well, the world community thinks the United States is turning our back on them. But your opinion is that you got elected to represent America, and America needs help.
We need protection. Everybody's taken advantage of us. The European Union made $151 billion on us last year. If you look at, I told you about China, you look at Japan, you look at South Korea, you look at so many, and we help these countries militarily on top of everything else. I mean, at what point does it stop? And when I left China, it was absolutely a fantastic meeting. We left, we hugged, we kissed, everybody was leaving, and then I get onto Air Force One, and the Prime Minister up there, Trudeau, didn't think, I guess, that we have any televisions on Air Force One, but they have, I think, 21 televisions or some ridiculous number.
And so you saw it and you hit the roof.
Well, you have to understand, we're hugging, we're saying goodbye, everybody's happy. I made changes to the agreement because I wanted it to be much better for the United States. I made changes. We're all happy. And then he got up and started saying that he doesn't want to be pushed around by the United States. Well, they charge us almost 300% on dairy products. So we can't do that
Have you heard from any of the G7 leaders?
They all called me to wish me happy birthday yesterday.
Really? And how was that?
It was very...
Not your birthday, but the message from the other side.
I took it very well.
Right.